I didn't have actually any brothers or cousins or anything, but there was a servant's son. We used to fly a kite every afternoon from the roof, and we had this puja, Vishwakarma, on which particular day the sky is just full of kites. I never saw my grandfather because he died 5 or 6 years before I was born. And my father fell ill almost about the same time that I was born, and he was almost in bed most of the time for about 2.5 years. He had Kala-Azar, and he died in 1923. I was 2.5 then. Another 3 years I think we stayed in Garpar Road in North Calcutta. Then the business folded up for reasons which I never found out. So my mother and I moved to a maternal uncle's house towards South Calcutta, Bhawanipur. My mother and I were staying there. See, I remember her as working. She was a very hard worker. She used to do embroidery, clay modeling, writing holidays in hill stations in Bihar. And we spent a long holiday in Darjeeling, I remember, when she took a job in a school called Maharani Girls' School. And the first sight of Kanchenjunga is unforgettable. That I remember very, very well. At 6 o'clock in the morning, my mother woke me up and said that come and have a look. And I stood at the window, and there were the snows, red, pink, with the sunlight, the snow catching the sunlight. And the first sight of sea at Puri was very, very exciting also. And then my uncle's first motor car, then our trips to the Maidan every afternoon and around the Victoria Memorial. And then at the age of 9, I started going to a school. It was called the Baliganj Government High School. It did turn out to be a very good school. This would be 1930 when I joined school. And I was interested in games quite a bit, more as an observer. I was very interested in football and cricket, and there were cricketers in the family. The leading Bengali cricketer was an uncle of mine. Even before my grandfather brought out his children's magazine, he had done, for instance, he had done abridgments for children of Mahabharata and Ramayana, and another collection of stories which, from the Mahabharata, which do not directly relate to the Pandavas and Kauravas. You know that there are lots of stories within stories, and they were already very famous. They were among the first abridgments for children, and they have not been improved upon since. And he was quite close to the Tagore family because they had the same kind of activity. In fact, the Tagores brought out one of the first children's magazines long before Sandesh, and he was writing for that also. And he was a friend of Abanindranath, who was a painter, because they have this common interest there, and Rabindranath, who was about the same age as my grandfather. They were very close to each other, particularly because of my grandfather would often go to Tagore's house in Jorashako in Calcutta to play the violin during the Magh festival of the Brahmos. They have the Maghotsava, it's called, and he was needed to play the violin along with the chorus and the solos. So he was very close to them. But around 1912, 13, he felt that he had to bring out his own magazine. By that time, the printing press was well established. And you can see from the first year or two of Sandesh that the quality of printing was extraordinarily high. But soon after that, my grandfather died, and my father took over. But he was also a very extraordinary writer and illustrator. He was not as professional as my grandfather as an illustrator, but he had certain unique qualities, like the drawings that he did for his nonsense rhymes, or the funny stories that he wrote. He had an absolutely unique style of doing comic illustrations, which nobody else has revealed in India. I remember songs and singing a great deal because my mother used to sing very well and my aunt was quite a celebrated singer. She used to make records for HMV. And I remember very vividly my trip to the HMV, the Gramophone Company studios, and the first recording session which I attended, I think about 6, half or 7 at that time. They were before the electrical recording days. They used to have to sing in front of a horn. They were all English engineers. For some mysterious reason, there were some records of classical music in our house, although nobody was really interested. Western classical music, there was one movement of Beethoven's violin concerto. There was the usual things which I think even Bengalis bought them, violin records by Chrysler, songs by Shaliapin and things like that. Every sort of well-to-do or upper-class Bengali, middle-class house had some records of Western music. Violin was very popular as an instrument, so there would be records of Chrysler playing odd pieces. Sketching, painting, drawing, I had it at the back of my mind while I was in college or even late school that I would be a professional artist doing perhaps some kind of commercial art. But I had no training for that. When the time came for me to decide what subjects I should specialize in, I had a very close friend of my father's who was a statistician, Professor Mahalanobis. You may have heard of him. And he said that you study economics because I have a magazine called, statistical magazine called Sankha. You can always get a job there for 250 rupees a month or something. I was not terribly interested in economics really, and I think my 2 years as a student of BA was more or less wasted. I lost interest in college because it was not my subject. I had to study it. I passed. I got an honors in economics, but it was not really my subject. But then my mother suggested, and I also agreed rather readily, that I should go to Santiniketan, spend some time there, and Tagore was still living, and they had some marvelous teachers like Nandalal Bose and Binod Mukherjee, Ramkinkar Bej. And to be there for some time, she thought that it would be a good thing to be in Santiniketan, in proximity to Tagore. I had some reservations about Indian art, the wishy-washy kind of rather sentimental stuff which used to come out in Ramananda Chatterjee's magazine, Modern Review, and Prabhasi at that time. Every month there was a color reproductions, and I didn't very much care for those. But I found eventually, after joining Santiniketan, that Indian art could also be very strong and virile, and it's not all sentimental sort of Victorian kind of stuff. But I studied painting in Santiniketan, but never meant to become a painter. I needed the background of Indian classical art, perhaps to be able to use it in commercial art later. So I got to know about Eastern art, Chinese, Japanese, our own schools, and also Western art. I mean, starting from early Egyptian or cave painting, rock paintings, down to post-impressionists or even the later ones.
When you came to Calcutta looking for a job, did you find it very difficult?
No, actually I found it very easily. It so happened that there was somebody who knew the assistant manager of DJ Kima, who was a Bengali chap. And it turned out that we had known that family I knew his brother, sister, my wife knew the family very well.